Hey there, how's it going everybody? In this video, we're going to be learning how to use Ruff. Ruff is a super fast Python linter and code formatter that's been growing pretty quickly in popularity lately. And I've been using it for some time now, and I've actually switched over to using it as my main linter and formatter for Python, which has allowed me to replace a few other tools with just this one. And I've also noticed it's really improving my code quality. It's built by Astral, which is the same team behind the UV package manager that I covered in the last video. And just like UV, Ruff is super fast since it's written in Rust. If you haven't watched that last video yet, I'll leave a link to that video in the description section below. But you don't need to have seen that video in order to follow along with this one. So I said that Ruff is a linter and formatter. If you don't know what those are, this is basically a tool designed to improve your Python code quality and consistency. But what makes Ruff special is that it consolidates a ton of different Python tooling that you might already be using, like Flake8 or pylint for linting, Black for formatting, isort for organizing imports, pyupgrade for modernizing your code, and a bunch of others. And it does all of this while being a lot faster than all of those other tools as well. So I thought it would be helpful to show you how to set this up so that you can get the most use out of it. In this video, I'll be showing you how to use Ruff both through the command line and how to set this up in VSCode so that you can get real-time feedback. But first we need to install this, so let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So there are several ways that we can install Ruff. You can install it directly into your local project's virtual environment using pip. So I could just say pip install Ruff. Now, this is a quick and easy way to get started, but the downside is that Ruff won't be available for other projects unless you install it in each of their environments also. So if we want this to be available in any project, we can install this globally, and there are a couple ways that we can do that. So one popular option for installing command line tools like Ruff is using pipx. Pipx installs Python packages into isolated environments, but makes their command line interfaces available globally. Pipx would need to be installed. I used Homebrew to install pipx, but if you're on another system, then I'll leave a link to their page in the description section below with their installation instructions. But once you have that installed, then you can say pipx install Ruff. Now, speaking of Homebrew, Ruff is actually available through Homebrew as well, but I generally shy away from using Homebrew for Python packages because Homebrew's Python package installations sometimes don't handle dependencies as cleanly as Python-specific tools. So you could use brew install Ruff for this also, but like I said, I tend to shy away from this. My preferred method, and the one that I'll be using in this video, is to install Ruff using UV. And as I mentioned, I covered UV in the last video, and I'll leave a link to that in the description section below. So I installed UV itself using Homebrew. And once UV is installed, then we can install Ruff as a global tool by saying UV tool install Ruff. So that's how I'm going to do it here in this video. But whichever method you choose, you should be able to check that the installation worked just by saying Ruff -- version. And we can see that, let me make this a little larger down here. We can see that we have this new Ruff version here. So now that we have Ruff installed, let's take a look at how to use this from the command line. And like I said earlier, we'll be seeing how to integrate this into VS Code as well so that it highlights and formats our code automatically. But understanding the command line basics first is really helpful for understanding what the VS Code extension is doing behind the scenes. Okay, so first I've got a sample Python file open up here, and I currently have my usual VS Code linting and formatting turned off so that we can see this from the command line first. So you might see a few issues already just by looking at this code, but if I run the code, then it should work fine. So let me run this, and we can see down here that we're just printing out this greeting for query. We're calculating these averages here, and we're parsing a JSON file here. And these are those functions there. So the code runs fine and there's no glaring issues, but let's see what Ruff has to say about it here. So I'm going to go back to my terminal and let's use Ruff to check this. So to do this, we can say Ruff check and then the name of the file. And this is main.py here. So if I run that, then we can see that it found 6 errors here and that 5 of these are fixable with the dash dash fix option. It's finding 6 mistakes right now, but this is with Ruff's default configuration, and we'll see how to check for even more errors in just a bit. And let me make this terminal just a little bit larger here once again. Now, if I wanted to check multiple files at the same time, then I could run a check on the entire directory. So for example, to check the entire current directory, then I could just pass that in as a terminal command there, and this is the only Python file that I have in this directory here, so it's just finding those 6 errors once again. So let me clear that out. So when we run this, let's go through exactly what it's showing us here. So it's going to point out an exact error and line number, and also give us an error code. So let's scroll through and look at some of these here. So we have just 6 total here. We can see that one of these is multiple imports on one line, which is line 1 up here. Another one is sys is imported but unused, time imported but unused, a lot of imports that we're not using here. So same with date time, same with random. And then we have one here that is do not use bare except. Now, a lot of these errors probably make sense, but some of them might not. And I've found this is actually a really good way to learn Python as well, because as you're writing code and Ruff is catching mistakes, their documentation is very good at breaking down why certain things are mistakes and give you examples of how you can improve or fix your code. So, for example, this last error here in our terminal, it's error E722, do not use a bare except. So let's say that you don't know what that means or why you wouldn't use a bare exception there. And let's scroll down to that actual line here. So this is what it is catching right here. So let's actually copy this error code here, and I'm going to pull up their documentation in the browser, and let's search this in their rule sets and pull up this code. And I'm going to be sure to leave a link to this documentation in the description section below. It's super useful. But now, if I read through this page, it breaks down exactly why this is bad and why we shouldn't do this. So we can see that this was derived from the PyCode style linter. What it does, it checks for bare except, catches in try except statements. Why is this bad? A bare except catches base exception, which includes keyboard interrupt, system exit exception, and others. Catching a base exception can make it hard to interrupt the program, example with Control-C, and can disguise other problems. Then they give you an example of what this looks like. This looks pretty similar to our code. We're just doing a try except. It's saying use instead to do a more specific exception when we catch this. And if we actually need to catch an unknown error, use exception, which will catch regular problems, but not important system exceptions. So now let's go back to our code and see if we can fix this. So one of the coolest features about Ruff is that it can automatically fix a lot of the errors on its own. You can see that it says 5 of them are fixable down here with this -- fix option. And it's careful to only automatically fix issues that won't break the functionality of your code. So if I wanted it to try to fix our code, then I could say, let's clear our terminal here. I'm just going to do a Ruff check and then add in that fix option. And I'm going to keep running this on the entire directory I have here, even though that's only one Python file. So I'm going to run this. And if I run that, we can see that it says that it found 6 errors, fixed 5 of them, and that 1 remains. And it displays the error that still remains here, which is that bare except. And if we look at our code now, then we can see that this is now cleaned up a lot. It took out all of those unused imports and some other issues that it saw. Now, you might not want to fix the code automatically without knowing exactly what it's going to do. So let me undo those changes really quick. So I hit Control-Z or Command-Z on a Mac, and I undid those changes. And let me save those. And now let's go back and see how we can see the changes that it's going to make when it automatically fixes this. To do this, we can add in the -- diff option. And if I run this now, then this is going to give us exactly what it would change without actually modifying the file. It displays this almost like a git diff would. So we can see here it's taking out all these unused imports here. And that was it, actually. I forgot that the only problems that we had were import problems there. But I was fine with those changes that it made. So I'm going to rerun this command here, take out that --diff, and just rerun that with the fix. And it makes those changes and then returns the one error that we still have here. And again, I'm going to make this a little larger so we can see everything. So we do still have this one error here that it didn't fix automatically. And in the documentation, it told us how we can fix this, but I'm going to leave that there for just a bit while we look at some more of what we can do with Ruff. So Ruff also includes a black compatible code formatter. To use this, you can use the format command instead of the check command. So I'm going to rerun this here, and instead of check, I'm going to say format and run that. And after I run that, you can see that our script has been reformatted to follow standard conventions and looks real nice with the proper line spacing, white space, and things like that. Now, just a quick tip on workflow. You're generally going to want to run a Ruff check fix first to fix the linting issues, and then run Ruff format afterwards. That way the fixes don't mess up any of the formatting. Now, if you have your terminal open while you're working on a script, then you can actually have Ruff check for errors in real time. So we can do that with the --watch option. So if I do this, instead of fix, if I say watch, now it's going to watch for errors here. So if I go up into my script and I import something that I'm not using in the script, so if I do like an import sys and save that, then as soon as I save that, we can see down here that it's watching and now says, hey, you imported something that you're not using. And to have it stop watching that file, we can just exit out with Control C, and now I'll clear that. Okay, so real quick, since we already fixed those import issues, I'm just going to go ahead and undo when I added that in, and let me redo this Ruff check here without the watch just to make sure we still have our one error, and we do. Okay, so now let's talk about how to configure Ruff, because I use Ruff for so much more than what we've seen so far. The defaults that come with Ruff are great and non-controversial, but there are over 800 built-in rules that we could be checking for in order to find errors in our code. Now, I don't use them all, but I do use a lot. And I find that there are so many useful ones outside of the default rule set. So there are a few different ways to configure Ruff. We can configure it globally to apply to all of our projects, locally to apply to individual projects, or a mix of both, where the local configuration overrides the global configuration if you do that. So first, let's look at setting this up locally in our project. We can use a pyproject.toml file, which is the standard configuration file for modern Python projects. You can also use a ruff.toml file if you'd like. Ruff looks for these files in the current directory and parent directories. I'm going to use the pyproject.toml file for now, and we'll look at a ruff.toml file in just a bit. If you don't have a pyproject.toml file, you can create one of those in your project directory. But once you have one of those, we can open it up, and I have one already created here. So let me open that and close down the sidebar there and make this a little smaller so we can see. Now, the pyproject.toml file can configure many different Python tools, so Ruff settings need to be nested under a tool.ruff section to avoid clashes. So this is going to be tool.ruff, okay? And within here, we can configure Ruff a bit. So the main thing you'll likely want to do is to extend on the default rules that Ruff enforces. To do this, we can say lint dot extend select, and that's extend dash select, sorry. And for now, I'll just set that to empty. And now we can pass in rule codes that we want Ruff to enforce. So for example, I know Ruff has one rule that enforces the use of pathlib over using the built-in open function. And that rule is path, PTH, all capital letters. So I like using pathlib when I can for a lot of reasons. So that's why I'm going to enforce this in my code. If you don't know the advantages of using pathlib, then I do have a video on that if you're interested. So I'll leave a link to that video in the description section below as well. But now that we have this rule being added to what we're watching for, let's save this and rerun Ruff check on our script. So I've got this pyproject.toml file saved. I'm going to go back to our script here, and now let's rerun our Ruff check. So I will rerun this, and now we can see that we're getting 2 errors. So let me scroll up to this other error that we're getting here, and we can see that it's PTH123, open should be replaced by path.open. So now that we've added these PTH rules for Ruff to watch, now it's enforcing that on our code base. And now you might be thinking, okay, that's cool, but how did you know the rule code to enforce that? How did I know that this was PTH here? So I get all of these rules from the documentation that we saw earlier. So if I pull the documentation back up here, let me click on their rules section over here, and I'll scroll through these a bit. So we can see that also in their sidebar, they have a lot of these listed here as well. But if I scroll through, we can see that they have a fast API section. They have some Flake 8 annotations, a section for async, and all kinds of different things here. Now, I make the text on my browser a little larger for the videos here, so it makes it hard to see what all is available over here in the sidebar. But if I make this a little smaller, you can see that we have a lot over here. And if I reload this, I think, yeah, the sidebar was broken from where I'd done a bunch of resizing and stuff. So you can see that we get a better overview over here in the sidebar of all these different rules. So now let me make that larger again so that we can read. Okay. So what I did personally was I browsed through this list. I read the descriptions for the different sections here and gradually added rules to my extend select list if they seemed useful and matched my coding style. Now that might be a bit more work than you want to do just to set up your the rules for your linter. So one strategy that you can use to discover rules is to just select all of them. And we can do that with just by adding all here instead of individual rules. So I'm going to save that, but I've got to warn you, Ruff comes with a lot of built-in rules. We just saw a small section of them over in their documentation, and some of them even conflict with each other. So for example, there are multiple different ways to enforce docstring formats depending on your coding preference, but Ruff will tell you when rules conflict. So another thing is that you're likely going to get a lot of errors and suggestions if you're using all of the rules. So just on my super short script here, let me run a check here with all of the rules selected. So if I now do a Ruff check on this and run it, then we can see that just with this short little 30-line script, we're getting 15 errors. And some of these might be things that you don't necessarily care about. So for example, one of the rules that it's enforcing here is that we shouldn't use print statements and that we should remove print statements. Now, I use print statements all the time because it's the easiest way for me to teach in these videos, but not having print statements in production code is probably a good idea. But let's say that you didn't care about print statements in your code. Well, if that's the case, then another thing that we can do is ignore certain error codes. So I could copy this T201 code here, go back to my pyproject.toml file, and now I can do a lint.ignore section, and I will set this equal to just that one code that we just copied. I will save that, and now I'll go back to my terminal here. I will rerun that check, and now we can see that we're getting 12 errors, and the bottom one is no longer that one about using print statements. And since we're getting 12 errors instead of 15, that means that we must have had 3 print statements getting flagged in that script. So that's one option that you can use if you want to discover different codes that you may or may not have known about. But the method that I personally used was adding in individual codes as I went through their documentation. And I added everything that I wanted into my global Ruff configuration so that it used those same checks on all of my projects without me needing to specify them in my pyproject.toml file like we've done here so far. So let's look at how we can create a global Ruff config, and we can see what mine looks like as well. But first, I'm going to delete my project configurations here so that we can be sure that the global one is working. So I'm going to go to the project.toml file and just remove all of those that we'd added in there. Okay. And again, just to make sure that worked, let me rerun that check. We're back to our one error that we had before, so that's working. Okay, so for a global configuration, your operating system is going to determine where you create this. Now, I'm on a Mac, so I created this in my home folder, and then within .config/Ruff, and then this is at a ruff.toml file here. So let me go ahead and open this up to make sure that that is the correct location. And yes, I do trust. And okay, so yep, this is my Ruff configuration file here, my global one. Now, if you're on Windows, I don't know that location off the top of my head, but I'll be sure to put it up on the screen here now. And I'll also do the location for Linux as well. I think it's the same as what it is for Mac. And I'll give those a second to fade away. And for you to see those, let me go ahead and close this. And now we can take a look at my global Ruff configuration file. So currently this is all commented out because I didn't want my personal rule set interfering with the beginning of the video. But now I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this. So I'll uncomment all this and save it. And I actually had it open over here as well. So I'm going to close that one. So now let's go ahead and look through this, and I've got this fairly well commented, and I'll also have a link to this configuration in the description section below if anyone would like this as a starting point. So at the top here, I commented what the default rule set was for Ruff so that I had that as a reference. And then if I scroll through, we can see that there are some rules that I have uncommented because sometimes I want to flag annotations, sometimes I don't. And sometimes I don't want print statements and sometimes I do. So I have those options there if I want them. And then down here towards the bottom, I also have some that I am ignoring. Like I don't like it telling me when my lines are too long, things about the doc strings and stuff like that. And you can see that I also have comments here for what each of these rules does, just so that I can tell at a glance without having to go to their documentation. Okay, so now that I have my global config saved here and all of that is uncommented, now let's go back to our script and let's rerun our check again to see what we get. So I'm going to do a Ruff check now. And now using my personal global Ruff configuration, we can see that we're getting 5 errors here now. And one of those is fixable with the auto fix feature. Now, since we can't auto fix a lot of the ones we're getting here, this is where integrating Ruff with VSCode becomes extremely useful. And this is probably how most of you will want to use Ruff day to day. I could have just started off the video showing you how to integrate Ruff into VSCode, but I feel like you're not going to get the most out of using this unless you understand what it's doing in the background. So now that we've done that a bit, now let's see how to get this integrated with VSCode so that it shows these errors within our editor automatically without us running this Ruff check command every time. Now, one big benefit of using Ruff in VS Code is that it allows you to remove multiple other extensions like black, isort, pylint, and things like that, since Ruff can handle all of those for you. So if you have those extensions installed, then you should be able to safely remove them after you get Ruff set up. So first of all, we're going to install the Ruff extension. So I'm going to open up my extensions here. Let me make this a little larger. And I've actually already come in here and deleted a lot of what I was using before, like black and isort and things like that. So you can see I no longer have those in my extensions since I'm using Ruff. So I'm going to do a search here for Ruff. I uninstalled it before this video. So now I'm going to reinstall it here. And like any other extension, we're going to see a README page pop up explaining how we can set this up. And there's some good information in here. I'll show you the same information in my settings, so we can actually just go ahead and close this. But you'd likely want to go ahead and read through that. And let me go ahead and close that sidebar. And I'm going to open up my settings here. And I already have these ready to uncomment here in my settings.json file. So let me scroll down to my Python section and uncomment these, and then I will explain what they do. Oops, and I also wanted to include these two as well here. So let me go ahead and save that. So now let me go ahead and explain these here. So this editor.default formatter with this Charlie R marsh.ruff, this sets Ruff as the default formatter for Python files. The format on save applies formatting every time you save a file. This source.fixall will automatically apply all the possible fixes on save. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm actually going to leave this commented out because I like to see the errors without them being fixed automatically. That way I can learn from any errors or coding convention mistakes that I make, but you can enable that if you'd like. And for source.organize imports here, this sorts your imports on save. And these are the same settings that we would have seen in the README file if we had read through that. So I also have my VSCode settings available on my GitHub in the .files repo if anyone is interested in seeing all of my VSCode settings that I've shown here. Now, these last two here for inlay hints, these aren't Ruff specific, but they're helping me fix some of the Ruff warnings by suggesting type hints. Okay, so with these uncommented, we should have Ruff working directly in our editor, and hopefully I don't have to restart the editor. And it should still be applying my global config that I showed earlier. So if I close down my settings here and reopen our terminal here, then first let's see if it's auto formatting. If I just add in a couple of unneeded lines here, if I then save that, we can see that it automatically formatted for it. So that's good. And we're also getting a lot of highlighted code here now. So we can see here that some is highlighted, open, accept. So if I open up this problems tab, then that's going to show us what all of those highlights are for. So if I open that up, so now we can see that we have this immediate feedback listing those 5 errors that we saw in the terminal before. Now, one of the best things about this in VSCode is that I can just command click, I'm not sure what that is on Windows, maybe control click, any of these codes, and it's automatically going to take me to that documentation page directly in the browser. So if I choose one of these, like this one here, I'm going to trust this and open it up, then we can see that it automatically opens up that code so that we can see what the problem is. So this is saying that it checks for variable and function assignments that use the same name as built-ins. So that's what this is here. I was calling this variable sum, and it doesn't like that because there is a sum built in that we are overriding. So I find the ability to just be able to click on these and go directly to the documentation, I think that's super useful, and I've learned a lot from these already, things that I didn't already know just from my normal coding and applying different rule sets that I've noticed that I have some bad habits that these have pointed out to me. So now, even on this super small script that ran perfectly fine at the beginning of the video without anything super noticeable. Now we can go through here and start improving our code. Now, I ran a poll on my community tab about a week ago asking if I should start using type hints in my tutorials, and most of you said yes. And Ruff actually has a rule set completely devoted to type hints. So if I wanted to apply that, then I could go back to my global configuration file here, this one for annotations. I could uncomment that and save it. Now, if we go back to the script here, I may need to restart VS Code for these to take effect. Let me go ahead and just restart this really quick, pull it back up. And now we can see that we have 11, and a lot of these are for type annotations. So to fix these, I could go through and hover over each of these and fix them. Or if you have something like Copilot installed, then I could ask Copilot to fix it for me. And whenever you have Copilot fix something that Ruff says is a problem, then Ruff is going to give that context to the AI, and that's going to make it much more likely that it's going to be done correctly. So it even helps out things like Copilot. But honestly, I think that the Ruff error codes offer so much detail and examples that using AI for fixing these things is a bit much. So for example, if I look at the someone here, that's shadowing a Python built-in. So since I know that that's a built-in, I could instead use something like total instead of sum. I save that and that goes away. Now, for anybody who is a little OCD out there, I'll go ahead and clean up the rest of these things that Ruff brought to our attention so that we don't have any more errors. I know that that would bug me if I watched a video and somebody left all of these errors here. So I'm going to go in and fix these really quick, and I'll just skip ahead a bit in the video so that you don't have to watch me fix a lot of the same issues and add in type annotations. Okay, so I've gone through and I've fixed those errors. I've added type hinting where needed according to the rules that I've put in place. I am now using pathlib instead of the built-in open. I've also imported pathlib up here. I'm also using a more specific exception catch here when we try to access our file. So now we're passing all of our Ruff checks. And I don't even need to test that in the terminal anymore now that we have this set up in our editor. But if we wanted to see what that looked like, then I will go ahead and open up my terminal here just so we can see all checks passed is what it looks like in the terminal if we pass all of those there within the terminal. So even though I had this very simple script that seemingly ran fine when we first started, there were a bunch of issues that Ruff pointed out that either improved our code or got it more in line with our coding style, my coding style specifically. Like I said, I've been using Ruff personally for some time now, and I like it a lot more than the tools that I was using. So first of all, it's an all-in-one tool, so I don't have to install my formatters and linters separately. And not only that, but it manages to be a lot faster than a lot of those previous tools as well. And I love the amount of control that I have over specifying the exact rules and issues that I want it to catch. So I definitely recommend trying it if you haven't yet. Now, one side note that I wrote down to mention at the end here is about type hinting. So I mentioned that Ruff does have some rules to enforce type hinting, but I don't want you to confuse that with a type checker. A type checker is something that analyzes your code and lets you know if you're actually using the wrong data types in different places, like passing in a string where an integer is expected. So a popular type checker is MyPy, and you can use that alongside Ruff to keep even better track of your code. I use both of those together and they work great, but type checking is something Ruff might take on in the future. So maybe someday that will be another tool that Ruff wraps under its belt. And I've actually changed up my workflow a good bit from what it used to be. So I think sometime soon I'm going to do an updated overview of my complete VS Code setup for Python so that everyone can see the tools and extensions that I'm currently using and how they all work together. So be sure to subscribe if you want to see that video when it comes out. But with that said, I think that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully now you have a good idea for how to set up and use Rust for your Python projects. There's plenty that you can use it for that we didn't cover in this video. So for example, you can set it up with pre-commit hooks so that you can make sure all of your code committed to your repositories is consistently linted and formatted. But I think this was a good starting point in seeing what it's capable of and why you'd want to use it over other tools. But if anyone has any questions about what we covered in this video, then feel free to ask in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer those. And if you enjoyed these tutorials and would like to support them, then there are several ways you can do that. The easiest way is to simply like the video and give it a thumbs up. Also, it's a huge help to share these videos with anyone who you think would find them useful. And if you have the means, you can contribute through Patreon or YouTube, and there are links to those pages in the description section below. Be sure to subscribe for future videos, and thank you all for watching.